Welcome to our channel, $1 Million Made Easy. This is the channel where we help you know your numbers. In this video, we want to answer the question, will $1 million at age 65 be enough? After all, recent statistics show that only 3.2% of retirees actually have that $1 million at retirement. And yet that seems to be the psychological goal, that if I can just reach $1 million. What we want to do in this video is consider inflation and potential lower returns that might happen in the future. And then we want to see, will $1 million be enough in some of these worst case scenarios? And also, what percentage success rate is acceptable to you? Because we often run Monte Carlo simulations. Do you have to have 100% possibility of success, or is 90% or less okay with you? So what I want to do is run some numbers for you. Let's say somebody's just 32 years old, has not been able to save a dime, and let's say their current expenses are about $6,000 a month, $6,000 or $7,000 a month, and they figure retirement might be $6,000 a month in today's dollars. Now, what we want to do is look at somebody, if they retire at age 67, how the numbers might work out if they save. Again, we're going to change all these numbers. They're $350 a month. First thing I want you to notice, what's our question right here? Considering inflation. That's what we want to look at. Look at the difference in inflation, because what happens is we can plan on $6,000 in expenses in today's dollars, but if you just have a 3% inflation rate 35 years from now to have the same buying power, you're going to need almost $17,000. Watch what happens if we go to a 4% inflation rate. Now it's over $23,000. See how important that inflation rate is? Now, what we want to do in this video is look at not just inflation, but what about potential lower returns? And what we do in this channel is we use the returns for the S&P 500 for the last 100 years, and we project ahead what similar returns might do for you in the future. We want to look at some of these worst case scenarios. What if it returns like the 1930s, or even as recently as the 2000s? How might that affect these numbers? Again, we're starting out with nothing, saving $350 a month. And if we did that, if we had this right here, one thing we want to take into account, Social Security. Now, let's say, for example, you're getting $2,000 a month. Again, we can change any of these numbers. This is the current average Social Security payment as of 2024, was just over $2,000 a month. So we're going to kick that in there. Now, we can change these, obviously, if Social Security, if you get less in a few years because of Social Security Trust Fund or whatever. But let's just use the 2,000. And what this table is showing us, what this spreadsheet is showing us, is if we had the worst case scenarios right here, potential lower returns, which would be negative returns for the next few years. If we took the worst case scenario, after 35 years, I want you to notice what you would have. You would have $1 million. If we use numbers from 1988, that's the worst 35-year period in the last 100 years. Given these numbers, saving $350 a month for 35 years, you would have $1 million. Second worst, using numbers from 1984, you'd have $1,027,000. And this column I like to look at because this shows you what you would have 90% of the time. Remember what we asked here? What's a percentage success rate is acceptable to you? Do you have to have 100%? Do you have to brace yourself for an absolute worst case scenario? Are you comfortable with looking at 90% of the time using numbers from the last 100 years? You'd have this kind of money or more. So you'd have 1.136. The median to be 1.402. Best case scenario is 3.285. But again, back to our question that we're talking about here, is $1 million enough? Folks, 35 years from now, $1 million, this is the worst case scenario. But even in that case, if you start withdrawing 16,883, which is what your future expenses would be, that's a 3% inflation rate, and you get this much from Social Security because this 2,000 is going to grow. We're going to grow it at 2.5%. But anyway, this is the kind of money you're going to need in 35 years, from age 32 to 67. In that case, the worst case scenario, you'd be running out of money at age 86. The second worst, you'd be running out of money at age 86 also. And there's be 10% of the time, you'd be running out of money at age 87. The median, even using this median of 1.402, you'd be running out of money at age 89. Given these numbers, watch what happens if we go to a 4% inflation rate. Now you're running out of money in these time frames. Even the median, that means half the time you'd have more, half the time you'd have less than these monies right here after 35 years. You'd be running out of money at age 76, at least at basically half the time of the money that you'd have. The highest should be okay. But I just want to show you the importance of inflation and also what the worst case scenarios is. Now, if we change a few of these numbers, say for example, you already have $25,000 saved up. Again, this is the row we're looking at. When you're running out of money, this is 10% of the time you're running out of money at age 87 or the median age 89. But watch what happens if you just have $25,000 saved up already. Then your money lasts in every one of these scenarios. See how important that 25,000 is? Having that compound for 35 years, and you do not run out of money. Even in the worst case scenario, you have well over $1 million all the way through, or over $2 million in 90% of the time. But that's the difference that made. But again, I want to go back to this right here. Is $1 million enough? If in this scenario, let's just go to 3.5% inflation rate. You're running out of money at age 78, the two worst case scenarios, and even 90% of the time you're running out of money at 79, and the median to be running out of money at 81. See how important that inflation rate is? See how important it is to consider what the market might be returning? Because in this case, half the time your money be running out at age 81 with these kind of sums. It'd be well over $1 million. It'd be over $1 million in each of these cases, but you'd still be running out of money if these are your future expenses. $20,000 with a 3.5% inflation rate. So there's so many questions we need to answer here to really answer this question. But I just wanted to show you this $1 million isn't the magic number that you might think. It depends on your age, how much you're saving, and also let's go back to this right here. Let's leave everything the same here where you're running out of money in these time periods. And let's say you do have the $25,000 initially at age 32. Watch how all these numbers change. It lasts the median. It lasts 90% of the time. Even the two worst case scenarios, you run out of money at age 88 and 89. So this 25,000 looks like it salvages everything. Let's go back to doing zero. But let's say your future expenses are just $5,000 a month. See how that changes. So your future needs will only be $16,000. Then you'd have your money lasting until age 88, at least 90% of the time. Again, all these numbers down here are staying the same. These $1 million. This all has to do with what your future expenses are, what the inflation rate is, and everything else staying the same. You've got the $1 million. Is it enough? If you have a 4% inflation rate, you're out of money in these time frames. Again, you got the same amounts down here, but because you have greater needs, because it's 5,000 has grown to almost 20,000 with a 4% inflation rate, you need this kind of money from your nest egg, and you run out of money in these different time frames. So there's so many questions. Don't just have a goal of reaching $1 million, because if you're young, $1 million sounds like you're going to be just fine. But if you're in your early 30s and just save this kind of money, you would have this kind of scenario possibly facing you in these worst case scenarios. In this case, 50% of the time your money be running out at age 81. But on the other hand, if you've already got some saved up, say you got the 25,000, now your money lasts in these scenarios. See how important getting some in there working for you, having it compounding for you, but also taking into account what happens if we have some negative returns in the next few years. You could have money lasting this long because it's 25,000. You're just fine, but don't forget to take into account inflation. But even in this case, with a 4% inflation rate, needing almost $20,000 35 years from now, you would be okay in every scenario except these two right there. And even then, money be lasting till 89 and 90. So again, just review. It all depends on what the inflation rate is and potential lower returns. Don't just look at reaching this $1 million, because in each of these scenarios, you have $1 million. Again, if we go back to starting out with nothing, you've got the $1 million, but it runs out in these time frames if you need this kind of money and have this kind of inflation rate. But that's what we love to do on this channel. Just run some numbers to help you. It's not just enough just to have this goal of reaching $1 million, especially when you're young, because of inflation. Look at that. 4% inflation rate. You need almost 4 times as much 35 years from now. Please consider subscribing to this channel. Please let people know about this channel. These are the kind of issues that we cover, that some of these goals that people have may not be the correct goals. There's so much that needs to be taken into account. So even though this psychological goal is $1 million, it may not be enough, but in many cases it might. Again, it depends on how much you already have and how much you're saving a month, and especially what the inflation rate is. Please like the video, and thanks so much for watching.